Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wa sayyidil mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ahli bayti tahiratihi ajma'een, amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For the last 2 weeks we have been talking about the subject of marriage. I thought this week, inshallah, we would move forward with the subject of family relationships, to look at the wider family relationships. Before marriage, the relationships that we know are the ones in the family where we grew up, the parents and the sibling relationships, and then the aunts, the uncles, the cousins. All of these are what we call family, before we get to that stage in marriage, stage in life where we come to know the marriage relationship. So let us look at today these other relationships, what are known as blood ties, the ties of kinship. All of these phrases are used, relations of kin. Many times when you have an operation or something, they ask, who is your next of kin? Who should we contact in an emergency? Who will care if you die? This is the point. In an emergency, who should we inform? Who needs to know if something happens to you? This is the thing. So these relationships, they are also known as the relationships of the womb. Womb meaning W-O-M-B. Meaning the womb, meaning that you were born from your mother, from your mother's womb. And these are the relationships of the womb, meaning your brothers and sisters, they were also born from the same. Your mother, she is the one who gave birth to you. Your father, obviously, he is the one who is married to your mother. And then the aunts, the uncles, all of these are related by blood ties again to your parents. And then your cousins come from them. So all of these are known as the relationships of the womb, blood ties, ties of kinship. These relationships are something which we open our eyes and we experience them, and many times we take them for granted. But the Qur'an does not take these relationships for granted. In fact, the Qur'an emphasizes them in a lot of detail. The Qur'an emphasizes these relationships in a lot of detail. First of all, Surah An-Nisa. Surah An-Nisa is chapter 4 of the Qur'an. It's a Medinan surah. It's very long. And it contains a lot of rules and regulations about how we should live. This is one of the surahs in the Qur'an which contains law. Commands of Allah Ta'ala. Do this, don't do that. Allah Ta'ala is giving commands. The opening verse of this surah, the first verse in this very lengthy surah, which is full of rules and regulations, begins with this command. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس, O mankind. Sometimes we know that in the Qur'an Allah Ta'ala says يا أيها الذين آمنوا. We saw that many times, O you who believe. Meaning that if you believe in Allah Ta'ala, you should obey His command. And then He says you should fast, you should pray. The ahkam which define you as a Muslim. But here it is before that. It is more basic. He says, Ya ayyuhan nas, mankind. This is before belief. The fact that you are a human being is sufficient. Here Allah Ta'ala says, if you call yourself a human being, then you should follow this command. What is it? Ya ayyuhan nas, ittaqu rabbakum. Ya ayyuhan nas, ittaqu rabbakum. Ya ayyuhan nas, ittaqu rabbakum. Fear your Lord, your providing Lord, the one who sustains you and keeps you alive. Fear Him. What does it mean, fear Him? Does it mean He is about to inflict punishment on you? It means there will be accountability on the Day of Judgment for what is to come. He is about to tell you something, and if you don't listen to Him, there will be accountability on the Day of Judgment. There will be sanctions. It's a way of indicating that Allah Ta'ala is about to command you. He says, ittaqu rabbakum, fear your Lord. الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. Allah Ta'ala explains His qualities in the Qur'an in different places. And according to the context, He says, Alladhi, the one who. And then He mentions different aspects of His creation, His power, His glory, His majesty. Here, what is relevant for you to know is that you should fear Allah Ta'ala, Alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidah. He is the one who created you from a single soul. This is what He wants you to understand. Allah is the one who created all of mankind. He is indicating that you are all related to one another by His command and His creation. He created you as one nation, one species, one human race, all descended from one soul. Min nafsin wahida. Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam is the common ancestor of every human being who lived on this earth from the beginning of time until the end, regardless of their color, their language, their land, or any other characteristic. This is first and foremost. Everything else will come after this. What language they spoke, what food they eat, what religion they followed. Sometimes the religion changes from time to time, from generation to generation. But the creation of mankind, min nafsin wahida, from one soul. You are all linked to one another. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and He created from that one soul its mate, زَوْجَهَا. Meaning that from Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam He created Sayyidina Hawa alayhi salam. And also that human beings, when they are created, then Allah Ta'ala is the one who creates the partner for each of them, as we have been discussing over the last couple of weeks. مِن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا, and He created from that His soulmate. وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً, and from that union between man and wife, whether it is the original Sayyidina Adam and Sayyidina Hawa alayhimus salam, or the ones who followed, such as Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, or your own ancestors. He says, وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَنِسَاءً. From that union, from each of these unions, He distributed in the land many people, men and women. So the multitudinous population of the earth, male and female, the origins are common. So for example, the Quraysh, the tribe of Quraysh, these tribal names, they came from what? A common ancestor. There would be an ancestor who did something notable or who was famous, and then everyone who was descended from that individual would have the same name, Qurayshi, because they are linked to that ancestor. So one individual leads to a whole khandan, a whole tribe that follows after them from that common ancestry. Then he says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ, and fear Allah Ta'ala. Again, a second mention of ittaqu. First he said, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ. Fear your Lord who created you from one soul. Now he says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ, and also fear your Lord, the one in whose name you seek from each other. الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ. Some people said in the commentaries that this meant that when people wanted to demand their rights from each other, they would invoke the name of Allah Ta'ala. See, in the name of Allah. In the name of Allah, they would ask for their rights from each other. If you believe in justice, if you believe in the ties between us, they would use these to invoke their rights from each other. He says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ, and the relations of the womb. The structure of this ayah is remarkable, that all of this is full of a description of Allah Ta'ala and His creation. Fear Allah, fear the one who created you, fear the one who sustains you. All of this is mentioning Allah Ta'ala's qualities, everything He did for us, the creation of mankind, and then suddenly, wal arham. Arham means the wombs. That's it, it's one word. Wal arham, and the wombs. It is the plural of raham, arham. So after all of this mention of Allah Ta'ala and fearing Him, He just says this one word, wal arham. It's not complicated, not lengthy, not expansive. Single command, wal arham. Be aware of those relationships which Allah Ta'ala has ordained amongst you through the wombs. Inna Allah kana alaykum raqiba. And finally, another reminder. Surely Allah Ta'ala is watching over you. When Allah Ta'ala is watching over you, what does it mean again? Accountability on the Day of Judgment. 2 times He said, ittaqullah. And once He said that Allah Ta'ala is raqiba. He is watching over you. So with this threefold invocation of His power and reminders of the accountability of the Day of Judgment, and a reminder that He created all of us from common ancestry, He gives us one command, that you should sanctify and respect the relationships which you have through the womb of your mother. The relationships of kin, the blood ties. All of these should be upheld. And this is explained very beautifully in a well-known Hadith Qudsi. Hadith Qudsi meaning words which the Prophet ﷺ narrated, in which he recounted what Allah Ta'ala has said. Not Qur'an, but words of Allah Ta'ala which are narrated by the Prophet ﷺ. In this, Allah Ta'ala has said, I am Ar-Rahman. That He mentioned here that His name is Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman we translate as the beneficent Lord, the one who gives, by whose gifts all of life is sustained. Ar-Rahmanu 'allama al-Qur'an, khalaqa al-insan, 'allamahu al-bayan. And then all of the manifestations of creation and His glory are mentioned after this name, Ar-Rahman, in Surah Ar-Rahman. But He also mentioned here that the root letters of Ar-Rahman are Ra, Ha and Mim. Ra, Ha, Mim. That's the root letter, those are the root letters from which the name Rahman is derived. And the Raham, the womb of the mother, is also derived from the same 3 root letters, Ra, Ha, Mim, Rahm. In Arabic, this is not accidental. If you have the same root letters, it means there is some common meaning, as a result of which the words have been derived from the same root letters. He said, I am Ar-Rahman, the merciful, and it is Raham, it meaning the womb. I am Rahman, the merciful, and the womb is the Raham, kinship. I have derived its name from my name. I have derived its name from my name. Allah is merciful. And the Raham is the first mercy that the fetus depends upon to sustain its life. When it first takes shape, it draws upon the mother everything, oxygen, passing away of toxins. Everything is sustained in the womb of the mother. It benefits from the mercy of the mother. He said, I am Ar-Rahman. I am the source of mercy, and the womb is the first manifestation of mercy which the new life benefits from to sustain itself. It is Ar-Rahm. I have derived its name from my name. So whoever joins it, joins meaning the ties which are derived from the womb, he joins them. Then I will join with him. It means Allah Ta'ala will connect with him through His mercy and His blessings. And whoever cuts it off, meaning whoever severs these links, I will cut off from him. It means that Allah Ta'ala will sever him from His mercy. If He severs the bonds of unity and kinship which exist between the individual and his relatives, then Allah Ta'ala says, I will also cut him off from you. This indicates that it's a serious matter. To cut off from your family members, to cut off from your relatives, this is a serious matter. Allah Ta'ala is saying, these bonds are created by me. It is a manifestation of my mercy. And so if you cut off these relationships, then Allah Ta'ala will also cut off from you. And he linked all of this arham, he linked all of this back to himself. You know, in that verse, as I described, all of Allah Ta'ala, He's made it clear that this is His creation. الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ. And He says, اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمْ. All of this is mentioned to show that this is a duty from Allah Ta'ala. If you maintain these duties, you do so out of fear of Allah Ta'ala. It's the style of the Qur'an, that when Allah Ta'ala gives us a command, He doesn't just say, do this or I will punish you, but He makes us understand the gravity of the situation. And He makes us reflect on the reasons behind the command, so that we understand these creations, these connections were created by Allah Ta'ala. And He is the one who will hold us accountable for breaking off from these connections. Then if we go to Surah Al-Ra'd, chapter 13 of the Qur'an, this same topic is developed further. Allah Ta'ala mentions some of the people of Jannah and their qualities. This is one of the ways Allah Ta'ala inspires us to work on earth, by telling us about the people of Jannah and telling us their qualities, so that we understand that it is the behavior here, the conduct here, which will result in the reward of Jannah. And He takes us forward in time and shows us, look, the people of Jannah have these qualities, so that we understand what we have to do now to get to that position. He says, الَّذِينَ يُوفُونَ بِأَهْدِ اللَّهِ وَلَا يَنْقُضُونَ الْمِيثَاقِ. This is verse 20 of Surah Al-Ra'd, chapter 13. And these verses are verses 20 to 25, chapter 13. Those people who fulfilled, يُوفُونَ بِأَهْدِ اللَّهِ, they fulfilled the promise of Allah, the contract with Allah Ta'ala. Meaning that this obligation is a contract with Allah Ta'ala. Ahdillah. Ahd is very serious. This is a contract. Ahd means that you have a written contract. Imagine if someone was to say to you that if you did something, that will be breach of contract. You will be liable for penalties. It means you have written down, you have... Contracts don't always have to be written. It means you have promised. It means you will be held accountable. There will be consequences for breach of contract. He says, بِأَهْدِ This is a contract you have made with Allah Ta'ala. وَلَا يَنْقُضُونَ الْمِيثَاقِ. And they do not break off the contractual relationship, the contractual obligations. So they fulfill, yufun, they are loyal to, they fulfill ahdillah, the contract with Allah, وَلَا يَنْقُضُونَ الْمِيثَاقِ. And they do not break off these legal obligations, al-mithaq. And in verse 21 he says, وَالَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصِلَ. This is the first of a long list. The people who maintain their contract with Allah Ta'ala, they have certain qualities. What is the contract with Allah? He tells us now what the terms are of this contract. And there's a list. And the first item on this list is الَّذِينَ وَالَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصَلَ. Those people who connect, yasilun, they join. مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصَلَ. What Allah Ta'ala has commanded should be joined. Amar Allah means Allah has commanded this. This is the command of Allah Ta'ala. This wording is used to indicate something which is severe. A serious obligation which will have severe consequences for breach. These are the people who join the ties of kinship which Allah Ta'ala Himself has commanded. وَالَّذِينَ يَصِلُونَ مَا أَمَرَ اللَّهُ بِهِ أَن يُوصَلَ. Allah Himself has commanded that they be joined. وَيَخْشَوْنَ رَبَّهُمْ. And they fear Allah their Lord. وَيَخَافُونَ سُوءَ الْحِسَابِ. And they fear the evil consequences of being held accountable. So people who do these things are the ones who fear accountability. وَالَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا ابْتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِمْ. And they are patient and steadfast purely for the sake of Allah. وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ. And they establish the prayer. وَأَنفَقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ. And they spend from what they have been gifted of rizq. سِرًّا وَعَلَانِيَةً. Secretly and openly. وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةَ. And another quality of theirs, and look at all these things, being patient, establishing prayer, giving zakat and sadaqat. Before all of this was ties of kinship. Ties of kinship was earlier in the list than all of these things. The contract with Allah consists of certain things, including the salah and the zakat and being patient and steadfast for the sake of Allah, and joining ties of kinship came before all of this in the contract with Allah. And then he said at the end, وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, and they repel evil with goodness. When people treat them badly, they turn that evil away by being kind towards them. وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, they repel the evil. The harm that people do to them, they repel it, meaning they turn away the harm of that by what? By being good to them. Because the harm is that when someone does something bad to you, then you respond with harm, and then the whole family breaks down, the family unit breaks down. This is what happens in families, right? Somebody does something. Somebody didn't do something that was expected of them in a family. Maybe someone had high hopes and they were not fulfilled. Or there were duties which were not fulfilled. Something happened. Maybe there was some sort of slight. Somebody felt their honor had been affected by the actions of a family member. What happens after that? They cut off the relationship and they respond. Then they do something back. And this is in the time of the Arabs, there were tribal wars that were continuing through generations for something that happened between ancestors many generations back. And still the tribes were at war because of something that happened earlier in history. Sometimes the people who are alive don't even remember what happened. But they remember that there is enmity between these tribes. And sometimes they may be related to each other. Families may be related to each other. But those bonds have become weakened because of one thing that was done at some point. Somebody said, you have dishonored me. Or you didn't fulfill your obligations. Or you didn't do something that I was hoping you would do. Sometimes it's not even a duty, but a hope which has not been fulfilled. So Allah Ta'ala says, وَيَدْرَؤُونَ بِالْحَسَنَةِ السَّيِّئَةِ, they repel evil with goodness. They treat nicely somebody who hasn't treated them well. So the family members who have not fulfilled their rights towards them, they continue to fulfill their rights towards the family members. And then this way they avert the harm of that situation. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ, these people, those people who have all these qualities, which join ties of kinship, spend, read salah, etc., and they repel evil with goodness, what do they have at all of the outcome of all of this? أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ, those are the ones for whom is the abode of the hereafter. Jannah is for the people who have these qualities. عُقْبَى الدَّارِ, the everlasting abode. Not the one which is temporary, not the one which has some periods which are calm and some periods which are troubled. Some period you have a life, you don't know how long it is. عُقْبَى الدَّارِ is the abode of the hereafter. There it will continue for eternity, and also in Jannah you will not suffer harm there. أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمْ عُقْبَى الدَّارِ. What is عُقْبَى الدَّارِ? He explains. جَنَّاتُ عَدْنٍ, everlasting gardens. جَنَّاتُ عَدْنٍ يَدْخُلُونَهَا, they will enter into those gardens. And what else? Will they enter alone and be lonely there, enjoying the pleasures of Jannah? No. The families which they were kind to will come with them. He said they will enter into Jannah, and يَدْخُلُونَهَا وَمَنْ صَلَحَ مِنْ آبَائِهِمْ وَأَزْوَاجِهِمْ وَذُرِّيَّاتِهِمْ, all those pious people, وَمَنْ صَلَحَ, provided they were salih, min abaihim, their ancestors going back through the generations, wa azwajihim, and their partners on this earth, wa dhurriyatihim, and their future generations. All of them will come into Jannah with them. The families who maintain good ties in this earth, on this earth, they will go into Jannah as families as well. And what will happen then? On this earth, it was a struggle to maintain those ties. When they all go into Jannah together, families, وَالْمَلَائِكَةَ يَدْخُلُونَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ, the angels will be around them on every door. There will be guardians at the doors of Jannah, مِنْ كُلِّ بَابٍ, and they will be speaking to them, saying, Salamun alaykum, peace be upon you, bima sabartum, For all those things you withstood patiently for the sake of Allah Ta'ala, بِمَا صَبَرْتُمْ فَنِعْمَ أُقْبَى الدَّارِ. How excellent is the abode of the hereafter. So they will remind them of the patience they showed on this earth, and they will say, peace be upon you this day. How excellent is the reward of the hereafter. They will welcome them into Jannah saying, you have worked for this, you deserve this, and look now and enjoy these rewards. فَنِعْمَ أُقْبَى الدَّارِ. We'll carry on from there inshallah next time. There'll be, I think, enough to continue a little bit with this same topic inshallah. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم.